So we're watching the murder trial for Derek Chauvin, who's charged with second, third, and second-degree manslaughter, second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter. And I have to tell you, it is brutal. This is absolutely brutal. They just had a bunch of kids, underage kids, testify for the prosecution. Witnesses who were standing on the sidewalk, filming this with their phones and testifying as to what this looked like to them, how they felt watching the murder of a man named George Floyd at the hands of police officers who are sworn to, protect and, serve. And they're doing the exact opposite. They're literally murdering a man in real time in front of these kids. I didn't realize, I don't know if you did you realize that there was a 9-year-old watching this? Did you realize that? Because I didn't. Did you realize that there was a 17-year-old girl who was watching this? Because I did not. Apparently, the 17-year-old girl took her grandpa's car and she drove to the Cup Food store to get an auxiliary cable for her phone so she could listen to some music. And she got there, and this is what she drove up on. She drove up on a murder in progress. We had testimony yesterday from a man who studies and has studied mixed martial arts his entire life. Started out as a kid, learning wrestling in school, and then progressed on. And he's standing there and telling Derek Chauvin the whole time, because he recognizes the chokehold as being a blood chokehold, meaning the carotid artery is what Chauvin is kneeling on with all his body weight, and he knows it's cutting off blood flow to Chauvin's brain. He knows that, and he's telling it to Chauvin. He's telling it to him the whole time, and this goes on for 9 minutes and 29 seconds, and apparently George Floyd died about 4 or 5 minutes in. Yeah, and Derek Chauvin stays on top of a dead George Floyd for another 4 minutes and 44 seconds while these people are standing there telling this police officer, Derek Chauvin, and, the guy that stood there in front, Mr. Tao, Officer Tao, stood there and said, this is what drugs do. And they go, this is not what drugs do. This is what you do. You're murdering him. And then a firefighter from the Minneapolis Fire Department, she walked up on the scene and she started screaming at Chauvin to take his pulse, because when they got there, George Floyd was moving, and now it's been minutes and he's not moving and he's not saying anything, and the last thing that George Floyd was saying was 27 times, I can't breathe, my head hurts, my stomach hurts, everything hurts, please, I can't breathe. I mean, the politeness with which this man died was extraordinary. And the firefighter is saying, why don't you check his pulse? Why don't you check it? Do it now, do it now. And they start cursing. Okay, and the language is really strong because they know what they're looking at. Now, they asked the underage 9-year-old girl who was a cousin, who was with her older cousin at the time. They asked her, how did this make you feel? Everybody is saying the same thing. It made them feel, the people who were forced to watch the murder, under threat from Tao and Chauvin, that they would be pepper sprayed, that it made them feel like failures, that it made them feel like they failed this man, because this man was absolutely unable. He was handcuffed with his hands behind his back, prone on the ground, face down, putting up zero struggle, zero fight. And the officers are yelling at him, get in the car. And he said, I will, but I can't. You're on me, I can't. It's a really sick, twisted scene, and it's brutal. Now, I don't know what's going to happen in this trial. I really don't. The worst part is, from all these trials, hardly anything ever happens that's meaningful. Now, Derek Chauvin is looking at 10 to 40 years in prison. And George Floyd already got the death penalty. And please remember what George Floyd's awesome crime was. According to the store owner, he used a fraudulent $20 bill to pay for a pack of cigarettes. A non-violent, the most non-violent crime you could possibly imagine, paying for something with a $20 bill that turns out not to be real. So here we are in day 2 of the testimony, and the 17-year-old girl whose face you will not see because she's underage, who drove to the store to get the auxiliary cable for her phone so she could listen to some music. She's still on the stand. And this is Erin Eldridge, the Minnesota Assistant Attorney General. She's the prosecutor, questioning this young girl about what she had just seen. Now, they just went through the video, the whole video. And it's really, I'm glad I wasn't on, because I don't know what to do. I just don't. I don't know what to do. But here's the questioning now.
What do you mean?
I was upset because there was nothing that we could do as bystanders except watch them take this man's life in front of our eyes.
And when you say we, were all of you doing what you were doing? Meaning not getting physical and not throwing punches or making threats to the officers?
Correct.
Nothing threats.
Nothing threats. No, you're. All right, thank you. You may step down.
Okay, and so the defense decided not to cross-examine her at all. And they did not cross-examine the other girl either, the 9-year-old who's now 10. Now, I don't know who the next witness will be, but she's leaving the courtroom right now.
Next witness.
So this is the prosecution's case in chief. I believe the defense is going to put on a case, and they don't need to, you know. They don't have to, but according to Eric Nelson, the attorney for Chauvin, he says he is going to put on a case. So that's probably why this trial will take much longer than.
Members of the jury, why don't we have you go back to the other?
All right, they're going to.
Long enough for a bathroom break. How's that?
Okay, bathroom break. So I don't know if you're watching this, if you're not watching this, but this is the murder trial for former cop Derek Chauvin. And I tell you, if this Chauvin dude can't be found guilty of murder, look, sometimes when there's the killing of an unarmed black man or an unarmed person, the police will always say that they were in fear for their lives or they had to make a split-second decision. There was no split-second decision that was made here. This went on for 9 minutes and 29 seconds. 9 minutes and 29 seconds. And, of course, Chauvin's attorney actually had the nerve to say to the jury that George Floyd was much taller, much bigger. You know, it's the big, scary black man defense. Even though we know George Floyd was handcuffed on the ground, on his stomach, with his face firmly planted on the side, on the gutter, in the gutter, okay? And his attorney actually had the nerve to say that because of George Floyd's large size compared to Derek Chauvin, quote, this was not an easy struggle. So I'm not a lawyer, but I don't think there's much of a defense available to you when it's predicated on it wasn't easy for my client to kill this guy, because that's pretty much what they're arguing. And now they're blaming the bystanders, too. Oh, well, they were a distraction. From what, murder? Don't have time to listen to the live show? Want to hear more on your schedule? Go to randyrhodes.com and buy a stinking podcast.